Donald Trump committed the cardinal sin when it comes to being charged in a criminal case. A few months ago, I did a video and I talked about how you should do like Donald Trump, and I talked about the fact that he had invoked the Fifth Amendment, his right against self-incrimination, over 300 something times. And I said, I was very honest about it. I said, listen, normally I don't point to Donald Trump as an example. Normally I don't hold him out as an exemplar, but in that particular situation, he raised the standard. He held the standard. He did what was necessary. But now, days ago, he was in fact indicted on a criminal case related to classified documents. Now, in this case, he did the opposite. And I'm telling you, whatever you do, don't do what Donald Trump did. What did he do? Donald Trump. Well, I'll put it this way. I heard one Harvard professor, a legal expert, put it this way. He said the most damning evidence against Donald Trump that caused Donald Trump to be indicted came from Donald Trump, came from his statements, came from him talking. And so the cardinal sin is this. In the year of 2023, or really any year, okay, all of us must assume that we're always being recorded. Whether it's video, whether it's audio, we have to just assume. And so assuming that, the one thing that we must not do, if we're engaged in any type of sketchy behavior, anything that could be deemed criminal, we have to assume that we are, means that you just don't have those conversations. You don't talk about the details of your possible crime. And so one of the last straws just before the indictment was that Jack Smith, who's leading up the Department of Justice's investigation into all of this, they came into a treasure trove of statements made by Donald Trump where he expressly and explicitly talks about classified documents. And he talks about how he knew that they were classified and how he couldn't go into certain detail about it, but he talked about it nonetheless. And all along, while this investigation has gone forth, one of the remaining questions, one of the pivotal questions was, would the DOJ be able to prove knowledge, that he knew that these were classified documents? And lo and behold, the DOJ, Department of Justice, comes into possession of audio, explicit audio, where that question is answered beyond a shadow of a doubt. Which means that even if the president, former president, invokes the Fifth Amendment, even if he doesn't take the stand, they have the answer. They have his voice. They have him talking about it in detail, essentially answering that question for any jury that might sit in judgment of Donald Trump. And indeed, sometimes when you make statements that are on audio or video, sometimes you might be forced into giving up that most precious right that you have, the right against self-incrimination, the right against having to testify essentially against yourself, or the right to not take the stand and put yourself in jeopardy of saying something that might hurt you. Because you have to take the stand to try to explain what you've already said. And so here's the thing. You never have to explain what was never said in the first place. Here's the thing. Silence is golden. If you hadn't said anything, there's nothing to explain. If you haven't said anything, there's nothing for the DOJ or any prosecutor to play against you. If you don't say anything, then the way our system is set up, the burden of proving a crime rests with the prosecution, which means that in theory, you could just sit there with your attorney, not put on any witnesses, not say anything, not cross-examine anyone. Now, of course, I don't recommend that strategy, but as a practical matter, that's the truth of the matter, because they don't have any statements. And they have to speculate about what you may have known, or they may have to take circumstantial evidence or try to fit circumstantial pieces together in order to prove something like that. But when it comes out of your mouth, they don't have to do that because they got you. They got your voice. And the jurors can listen to that. And based upon that, along with everything else, the jurors can make a decision about whether you knew because you've said something. And so in this instance, I'm telling you the exact opposite. Before I was saying, do what Donald Trump did. But now I'm telling you, don't do. The last thing you should ever do is do what Donald Trump did in this particular situation, which is Donald Trump committed the cardinal sin. Just remember these things. You never have to explain what was never said in the first place. And silence cannot be misquoted. Silence cannot be played back. Silence can't even be mentioned in this context, because you have an absolute right against self-incrimination. You have an absolute right in a criminal procedure not to say anything that might be incriminating, not to say anything that might cause you to be convicted in a court of law. And indeed, in this situation, breaking that silence, making statements, running your mouth for Donald Trump, for the former president, could in fact cost him decades of his life. Donald Trump gives us a cautionary tale. 2023 and beyond, we all must assume that we're being recorded. And assuming that, we must never, I repeat, never talk about criminal behavior, talk about the details of what you've done. It's not wise. Take great care.